Hi there. Are you an EV driver? Not necessarily a Skoda driver, but an EV driver concerned about the cost of public charging. Maybe you're thinking about buying an EV and you cannot actually fit a charger at home, so you're worried that you'll be reliant on public chargers. And my goodness, the cost of those has gone up recently. Well, there was a story in the news yesterday that got lots of attention. Frankly, I don't think it's really going to come to anything, but the story was that the Chancellor is considering in the upcoming budget charging EV drivers 3 pence per mile to drive their cars. That's not instead of the vehicle excise duty that that was introduced last year. And if you drive a car that's worth more than £40,000 at list price, then you get the expensive car supplement on top, the so-called luxury car tax. So you might already be paying many hundreds of pounds a year to tax your car. Well, the story says you're going to have to predict in advance how many miles you'll drive over the course of a year, tell the government, pay them 3 pence per mile, and then at the end of the year, you'll have to tell them how many miles you have driven, and you'll either get a refund or an extra bill, a top-up charge. Can anyone see the problem with that system? Can anyone see why it might not happen? Yeah, it's totally reliant on you being honest and telling the government how many miles you've driven. I simply can't see it happening. And the alternative way, where they monitor everything we're doing with lots of new technology, that would be way, way too expensive and it would cost them more than it would raise. So personally, I can't see that happening. However, there is another proposal which I think is likely to come, and that is largely unnoticed at the moment. So, business rates. All businesses pay them. Well, all big businesses pay them, and it really depends where you are and the size of your business, how much you pay. But most businesses pay for business rates, and it goes into central government and then they distribute it out to local government. That's the theory. So at the moment, charging bays are not specifically rated. The petrol stations where they're sited will be rated. Maybe if they're in a motorway service area, that will certainly be rated and will pay rates. But the Treasury have hit on the idea of actually charging the charging bays separately. And Charge UK, which is the body representing charge point operators, yesterday launched a campaign. Yes, at the very same time, everyone was frothing at the mouth about this rather unbelievable story about 3 pence per mile. They were actually launching a campaign about something which really is going to come unless someone does something about it. And they reckon that the incoming bill for charging bays and business rates will be around £100 million. And they average that out, and again, this will be averaged between those who do very little public charging and those who do a lot, but they think on average that will increase our costs as a driver by up to £315 a year. Clearly, that's very, very bad news, and probably for most people, it's more than would be raised or more would be cost by a 3 pence per mile charge. So, if you see anybody frothing at the mouth about 3 pence per mile, can I ask, point them at actually this. And if they want to get excited about anything and get active about anything and lobby the government, then they should be lobbying, getting behind ChargePoint UK or Charge UK and lobbying the government about this business rates extension to charging bays. If the government seriously wants us to move to electric vehicles and away from fossil fuels for all the benefits and air quality and all that good stuff, then really this is not a helpful move. This is like trying to drive your car with the handbrake on. It's really not helpful. Other things that Charge UK are lobbying on at the same time, they've got 3 points. 1, the business rates. 2, standing charges. This is something that really ought to be looked at by the regulator, Ofgem. But the standing charges which charge points are levied in the last 4 years have gone up 462%. So if you're wondering why it costs so much to plug into an Ionity charger or whatever else on the motorway network, or any public charger, frankly, have a look at that. The costs just of the keeping the power connected have gone up 462%. I spoke to a friend of mine about a year ago who works for a local authority and looks after their charging network. He said 12 months ago that it was now over £1,000 per year per charger just to keep the power connected. So that clearly is going to have an effect on the price which we pay. And then finally, the last point, or the third point in Charge UK's campaign, which they launched yesterday, is VAT. This is a straightforward government tax. Now, when we charge at home using electricity, the very same electricity that comes out of the public chargers, we pay 5% tax to the government. When you do it on a public charger, it's 20%. Again, this is not helpful if the government is really serious about hitting its public policy objective of getting everyone to switch from fossil fuels to electric vehicles. Why is it 4 times as expensive in tax for one lot of electricity than it is for the others? So, rather than being tempted to join in the feeding frenzy about 3 pence per mile, which frankly I don't think is going to happen because it would simply be pretty unworkable and wide open to abuse and dishonesty, why not actually get involved in campaigning and lobbying your MP, lobbying politicians generally, or commenting on media stories about these 3 things that do matter: business rates, VAT, and the standing charges. Those 3 things make public charging really expensive. Yes, the wholesale cost of energy has gone up, but it's come down again a little bit. Yes, the cost of paying for staff and so on that the charge point operators employ, that will have gone up. But by far the biggest changes that could be made are these 3 changes: stop business rates, cut VAT, and regulate those standing charges and bring them more in line with what is the sort of thing that we pay at home. Anyway, bit different, not Skoda specific. Apologise if it's too political or if it gets anybody upset, but I think it's important that in this time when there's a lot of disinformation around or misinformation, it's important that we focus on the right topics, not on things that frankly are a bit of a nonsense story. Anyway, I'll see you in another video very soon.